Welcome to our channel, Behind My Story. Please like, share, and subscribe.
In people's lives, there are unbelievable coincidences that no one could imagine happening. During those times, you have to ask yourself, is this real or is it a joke? Here is such a story. I am John, and I am 15 years old. I live with my parents and my sister Rona. I'm immensely popular at school and have lots of friends, and I'm the captain of our school football team. I also used to play guitar in a small band consisting of me and my friends. We would hold concerts at clubs and our friends' homes. My only flaw is that I like making fun of people. I just can't stay quiet when I see something conspicuous, obtrusive, or ostentatious. My teasing sometimes hurts people, but honestly, I never worry much about hurting people's feelings. Little did I know that a day of reckoning was coming. One day, my parents were traveling to visit my aunt to see her new baby, and I was returning from camping out with my friends. When I got home, I found a note from Mom asking me to buy some items from the store, so I went to the supermarket. The supermarket owner was a kind gentleman named Henry. When I entered, I didn't see him, so I called out to him. A strange voice answered from somewhere. It told me to do my shopping, and he/she would be out in a moment. I had just begun gathering the needed items in a shopping cart when I was surprised by a voice behind me that asked, "How may I help you, sir?" I looked around to see a short man around the age of 40. He looked a little like Gollum in the Lord of the Rings movie. I laughed out loud. He smiled at me but had no idea why I was laughing. I told him that he looked like Gollum from the movie, and he asked me if I had a problem with that. I told him that it was his problem, not mine. I asked him if he ate like a human or if he ate raw fish like Gollum. I asked him to ring up my items before I died laughing. He looked a little annoyed by my teasing, belittling behavior. As I was leaving, I tossed him an apple and told him that, living in a cave for such a long time, he needed to eat some fruit to stay healthy. Then I laughed again. Once I got home, I called my friends and told them about Gollum, and invited them to visit me the next day. They brought over a few raw fish, and we went to the supermarket and threw the fish on the floor. One of my friends said, "Oh dear, I've dropped my fish." Then we ran out of the store. Mr. Gollum came out and cleaned up the floor with a look of annoyance. We repeated this prank several times. Sometimes we would throw rotten fruits, and sometimes one of us would rush in and make a mess and then run away. His reactions made us roll on the floor laughing. It was great entertainment. On our way to school on our first day of the new school semester, we stopped by the supermarket to tease Gollum some more, but he was nowhere to be found, so we proceeded to school. At school, we learned that we would have a new teacher who was reportedly very tough. When the principal came in with the new teacher to introduce him, we were shocked to find out our new teacher was none other than Gollum, or Mr. Travis, as the principal called him. He said hello to the class and asked everyone to sit down except for my friends and me. He told us that our first lesson would be about housekeeping, and that my friends and I would be cleaning the classrooms, the schoolyards, and the toilets, but only after class was over. My friends and I had to remain standing during the whole class. Mr. Travis came over to me and whispered in my ear that he was going to teach me and my friends some manners. It was the most difficult school period of my life. My friends and I learned a valuable lesson. Don't make fun of someone because he may be your boss someday. I must leave you now because I have to clean the restrooms.
My son killed me. Yes, you read that correctly. I am not a ghost or an evil spirit that needs rescuing. I have a brave heart. My name is Megan, and I hope to inspire you with my story. I lived with my father and my sister Marlene after the death of my mother, who died from an illness. Though I was only 18 years old, I became responsible for taking care of my whole family. I did everything for them, like cooking, cleaning, washing, etc. My father was a great man, and he did his best to make us happy. I supported both my sister and my father. We faced a lot of problems together: illnesses, financial problems, school, and the like. But there came a day when I had to make a life and death decision at my young, tender age. I fell in love, as any girl my age tends to do. My sweetheart turned out to be loved my neighbor, a guy named Dave. We had grown up together, and we shared everything. Love, sadness, jokes. Our dreams had evolved as we grew up too, so we decided to marry. He knew all about my life circumstances, so he chose a flat near my family for me. We had a nice party and celebrated with our families and friends. Every day, he proved himself to be a responsible man. He loved and respected me, and I him. Finishing my studies was one of my dreams, and Dave supported me in every way to achieve it. But my biggest dream was to have a baby. But sometimes life just isn't fair. One day, while cleaning the house, my heart began beating rapidly, and I couldn't breathe well. I was barely able to call out to Dave, who came immediately when he heard me cry for help. I had had this symptom before when I was younger, but I never told my father because I didn't want to worry him. Dave took me to the hospital, where a doctor said I had a serious heart condition. And not only that, I was pregnant too. Pregnancy and a heart condition do not a good combination make. So we had to choose between the baby's life or mine. My father and Dave asked me to abort the baby. Though they tried hard to persuade me, I resolutely refused. I agonized a lot during my pregnancy. My father and Dave were so worried for my safety. My father and Marlene left their flat to live with me. In addition, Dave cut back on his working hours to stay with me. The day came when I went into labor. They took me to the hospital, where the doctor checked me over and pronounced that my condition was so serious that I wouldn't be able to survive the childbirth. My family and I were shocked. I held Dave's hand and told him that I was strong enough to survive this. Dave hugged me, crying tears like a river. I was so afraid, but I did my best to hide that fact. I looked to my protruding belly and said to my baby, "I want you to know that I sacrificed myself for you. You had better grow up to be a great young man. I love you." Then the baby started pushing its way into this world. The scene fades to blackness. The baby is born. Suddenly, a year later, a birthday party is being held. The baby is now 1 year old. A woman is singing with the baby and her family. The woman looks at you and winks. Megan says, "Haha, fooled you. I lived through the childbirth. Sometimes life gives us a second chance, but you have to be willing to accept the risk." I am Brenda's child, or at least I was. Because my grandmother had died and my mother at some point in her life felt that drugs would be beneficial to her, I was put into foster care at the age of 2 and adopted at the age of 7. I have no real memory of Brenda, just her name and the last time I saw her. I was 7, and I had gone to a foster care agency for a visit. She brought me some strawberry candy. I remember my adoptive mother telling me to say thank you, and I did. Then Brenda got up and told me she would see me again. I went back to the agency a month later for a visit, and she never showed up. My mother was gone, and I was no longer her child. I was fully aware of being adopted because my adoptive parents, who I've lived with for the past 4 years, asked me how I would feel being their child, and I said I had no problem with it. So they adopted me and my biological sister at the same time. I can remember that when I got adopted, I was happy, but at the same time sad. I was happy because I had a family, a nice warm bed to sleep in every night, plenty of food to eat, and a place to run around. I was sad because I never got to say goodbye to Brenda, and the last time I saw her, I didn't take in what she looked like. I was sad because she never showed up to me again. She had lied when she said that she would. I'm not sure why I never saw Brenda again. But for years, I looked at myself as an intrusion. I figured she didn't want to see me anymore because I needed things and that would get in the way of her buying her drugs. When I went to sleep, I'd have dreams that Brenda had been looking for me and found me. I'd have dreams that she would recognize me and come up to me and say, "It's me, your mother." But I never talked about these things. I guess I just didn't see the point. It wouldn't have changed the feeling of loneliness that she had left behind. My adoptive parents didn't make it that easy for me to talk either. It wasn't that they weren't good to me. They took me on road trips, they took me to, and great adventures, and they got my hair done every 2 weeks. They gave me a stable home, something I probably would have never had if I had been in foster care or still lived with Brenda. But my adoptive mother jumped to conclusions when I would try to tell her little things about boys or school or anything that happened in my life. She always assumed I was getting in some kind of trouble. So there wasn't any way I would have told her about my most painful private thoughts, even if I had thought of telling her. Instead, I just tried to be a nice kid who always seemed happy. I would smile, laugh, and joke. I'd come home and talk about everybody under the sun and how they were doing, except myself. I didn't want my adoptive parents to feel as if I wasn't appreciative or that I didn't love them, so I tried to act as if everything was good. When you're adopted, you feel like your adoptive parents at one point or another are going to expect you to be grateful. You imagine they're thinking, "We could have left you in foster care." And I was grateful, but there was still a part of me that was angry at having to be grateful for just being their child. There was a part of me that didn't trust their love. A part that said, "What makes you love me when my real mother didn't love me? What's so real about your love?" When I was angry, I expressed my pain by either writing or acting out, or sometimes both. At school, I had a quick temper. I got into physical fights and cursed people out. I ran away from home a lot, more times than I can count. My family couldn't understand why I acted the way I did, and neither could I. I just knew that I felt bad. If I was out in the street and the thought of her would enter my mind, I would turn my head and find something to distract me. If I was at home, I would get up and grab a book or watch television. But even while I blocked her out, the hurt continued, and my behavior got worse and worse. I spoke whatever was on my mind and cared very little about how people were feeling. My most common response to anything anybody said to me was whatever. I was rude, rebellious, and the smallest things ticked me off. I had a non-caring attitude, and the worse I got, the more frustrated and angry my parents got. By the time I was 12 or 13, my mother and I weren't really getting along. She often beat me, and a couple of times she could have seriously hurt me. Whenever I got on my mother's nerves, she would tell me, "I don't care who you go and tell that I punished you. If they want you, they could have you because I am tired of you." Or she'd say, "I never had this problem with my sons. Why couldn't you be like them?" I felt like my mother didn't want me, even though she had adopted me. I felt that she wanted a replica of her children, who didn't act out so much and didn't get in trouble in school standards I could never live up to. It didn't help that much that my extended family never really accepted me. Every Christmas, they acted funny towards me. I found out later that some of them never wanted my adoptive parents to adopt me in the first place. When things got really bad with my mom, I went to one of my aunts for help, and she threatened to call the police on me for running away. She didn't like me, and the truth is, she didn't like my mom either, and she just didn't want to be involved. I ran away for the last time when I was 14, even though my mother wanted me back. I felt she had put me through too much to return. I rejected the only family I had had for the last 10 years, a family I had come to feel didn't want me, but just put up with me, even though my mother wanted me back. I felt she had put me through too much to return. I'm 19 now, and I've been on my own for the last 5 years. I've lived with a friend, I've lived on the streets, and I've lived in a foster care home. I've grown a lot, but I haven't really come to terms with my feelings about being given up or about being adopted. I have friends and other people who support me now, so to a large extent the feelings of loneliness have disappeared. But my anger has not. Instead of blocking it out, I talked to my boyfriend about it and tried to make sense of it all. Maybe one day I will forgive and forget, but right now I feel like the only true family I will ever have is the one that I will one day start. I do have some contact with my adoptive mother. Sometimes I talk to her when I call my sister, who still lives with them. My mother wrote me a letter apologizing for the past, and she has even asked if she could come to my college graduation. I'm thinking about it, but I'm not sure I can forgive her yet for all the things she said and did to me that really hurt. I don't think I will ever forgive my extended adoptive family. They weren't there for me and my mother when we were having troubles. They didn't stick by me. They made me feel like they never wanted me. To this day, I carry around with me this feeling of not belonging, and this feeling of wanting to belong. When I was younger, I was able to block the memory of Brenda out of my mind, but now it's not so easy. I look into the mirror and I want to know who I look like. If the children I intend to have one day ask, "Mommy, what was she like, your real mother?" I want to be able to answer that, or I'd like my kids to be able to ask her for themselves. It seems like the chance of finding her are as slim as the skin peeled off an apple, so I gave up on that. I realize I may never find her. I'll have to accept that. Still, I want to find her, and the thought of her comes into my mind often. I am angry at her. I am angry because she lied to me, and I am angry because she left me. But I still believe that even if I found out that Brenda was not alive or even in jail, it would bring a sense of closure. It would fill up that empty space in my heart. Do you guys think I should keep looking for her? Or is it too late?